The first horror movie of 2022 is now released in theaters. It's the return of the Scream franchise. It's Scream 5, or Scream 2022. I guess we're gonna have to differentiate from the first Scream to this Scream. It's, whatever. It's the 5th one in the franchise. And it seems as though that when I was doing my reading negative reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, it seems like that some of the critics on there said that this movie was not really scary. It focused a lot more on the references than it was focusing on the scares. I haven't necessarily seen the movie just yet, and you will see my reaction of how I think of the movie in the second half of this video. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and look at some of the reviews that some people have insisted on whether or not this movie is in fact scary or not scary. Or can it at least be funny? I mean, it probably will be, and that's a little bit of a win situation right there, but we're mostly focusing on the scares right now. Okay, so here are some of the negative reviews that I have seen from Rotten Tomatoes. The Ghostface killer returns in a self-deprecating fan service buffet that's woefully short on scares. Scream's 25th anniversary relaunch will have audiences laughing out loud as opposing to cowering in terror. There is not a single surprising element in Scream, and that's sincere betrayal of whatever legacy belongs to this franchise. Yeah, sometimes movies that rely mostly on jump scares and you expect those jump scares to happen at certain aspects, that is pretty disappointing when you're watching a slasher film, and that does disappoint me a little bit too when I watch a slasher movie because they can be long and boring, and they mostly do rely on popping out and trying to scare you. But sometimes that can work, and sometimes, occasionally, the Scream franchise can work at some points during the films. But I will admit, relying on that isn't going to work all the time, but we'll see once I watch the movie and see if I agree with what this person said. Seriously overindulges in self-referential cleverness to the point of undermining the actual scare factor. So yeah, some of them have a problem with the scare factors because it's mostly relying more so on the references than it is focusing on trying to be scary, which I don't think is personally a bad thing for the movie as a whole, because I do enjoy more of the comic style of the film than I do enjoy like the scare factor. But honestly, if this movie is trying to aim at being a scary movie, then maybe there is somewhat of a problem. Let's go ahead and see what the positive reviews are actually saying about this. Okay, there seems to be some on here. This one says, a killer time at the movies with its own words on legacies and trauma, a minor slasher miracle. So it seems like that, according to this brief summary, that the story that's being addressed with Sydney Prescott and experiencing what it's like to be traumatized for at least the 5th time in a row in this franchise, this does create some really good commentary and insight on the psychological analysis of our main character, so could be some interesting insight with what they're doing in the film. Scream set pieces are as fun as they are bloody, the type of tailor-made for a packed theater setups that understand why horror is such a close cousin to comedy. Well, it does seem like that people are liking it for the comedy. There is a thing with horror movies now where they seem to be like, if we're not scary, we gotta be funny. And this does seem like the good opportunity to bring back Scream again, just so that in case you don't necessarily make the audience scare, make them laugh instead. So this is, again, like a win-win situation, but when we're talking about the scares, it seems like that this movie is focusing a lot more on the comedy than it is focusing on the scares. So maybe it isn't that scary as people are saying it is. Scream is bigger, bloodier, and better than ever. I can't pronounce his name, and Gale do a fantastic job honoring Wes Craven's legacy while giving fans some fresh new twists and turns for the franchise. For the most part, this is a requel as fast, funny, and ferocious as a Scream movie should be. In an era of elevated horror, it's a gloriously gory basement party. Okay, that's really saying something. It's a standalone blast, but if you grew up on these movies, this film is like a bloody message of love for you. Scream feels familiar, but it's unafraid of criticizing its existence while providing commentary on the new wave of horror and toxicity in fandom. I like what I'm seeing with this one. If it is taking advantage of how horror has pretty much evolved from how it used to be back in the past, and also talking about how fans can usually be insanely toxic, which is something that is traditional with all the other past Scream sequels, but it can actually be really important and relevant to now, which is so much perfect timing. I think that this could really be a really good sequel, and can also lead into stuff that can be pretty scary. Best entry since the original. A very clever third act twist does the metaphor franchise proud, and David Arquette does a lot of heavy lifting. Ghostface is still iconic. It's funny without taking down to audiences or the genre, it's scary without resorting to cheap scares or gimmicks, and it's joyously unpredictable in a manner that the first Scream film truly delighted in. Alright, so according to some of these reviews, it seems like that the scares are pretty much a little bit all over the place. Some of them are saying that they are cheap jump scares, while I saw one comment just then that said that they aren't and they're actually done pretty clever. Some of them say they're focusing too much on the comedy, while other people are saying that the comedy is actually pretty nice and it's balanced along well enough, getting its fair share as well. So the scares in here, for Rotten Tomatoes, it seems like it's pretty mixed, but at least they can all agree that it is definitely funny. So now I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys my thoughts on what I think about it and see if it is scary or not scary. So, I just got back from seeing Scream 5, and do I think that this movie was scary? No, not really. Some of the scares in here, they're pretty much relying on jump scares, and at other moments it's like lingering, and then you kind of just want the movie to get on with itself. In terms of like Ghostface, yeah, he does some of his routinely kills here and there, but in terms of like a slasher film, that's kind of just self-evident in terms of what they're doing, and I don't know, I don't find that kind of aspect to be scary. I find it to be a little disturbing, but not scary. There is something scary, at least towards the end of the movie, but I don't know if that would lie into like scary or disturbing. In terms of what they did with one character arc at the end of the film, I thought it to be pretty intense. So this is how I'm going to end this video. I'm going to look at Slate.com because they usually have this thing called the Scarometer, and I'm going to look at the analysis on what they think in terms of seeing this movie as scary or not scary. So this is what they think in terms of suspense. Then on a scale of like 0 to 10, they put it like at a 7. So it's like at the place where Jaws is at. I mean, do they think that Jaws is that intense? I mean, yeah, there's some amount of suspense in Jaws, but this is where they would put it at. The original, which is Scream 1996, they would put it right here. For me, the amount of intense in a movie, I don't know. Suspense is not something that I'm all for. Sometimes it could be thrilling, but at other times it depends on the situation that they're in, that it would get me invested in the movie. So I probably would have put it at like a 6. In terms of gore, it seems as though that Scream is at the exact same one where the original one is at. It's at an 8. Yeah, there's tons of gore in here. I don't really rely on gore as like my go-to thing on horror films. If something is bloody, it would be disturbing, but sometimes it's gotta be like, it has to depend on the situation where characters are trying to get out of a specific situation. Sometimes it's like, hey, I'm here and I'm gonna stab you. Sometimes it's the same run-of-the-mill trope where you know that the killer is going to be hiding somewhere and how they're going to do one thing even though they're trying to make you expect something else to happen. There's some amount of twists and turns here and there with what the movie is doing, but at other times it's like, okay, I expected that to happen. Spookiness. How much will it haunt you when it's over? For a 2, I would go for a little bit of a 4 right there. That's a little bit harsh. Like I said, it's only because of what happens at the end of the movie. I think there's something disturbing here in terms of like, you know, spookiness. So where do they rate it overall? It would be at number 5. For the original, though, they put it at number 7. So for Slate, it depends. It's like an either-or situation. It's just, are you scared by situations that are put you in this place, or are you not scared in situations that put you in a place like this? And that's kind of the same boat that I'm in. I don't find this movie to be that scary. I think it's okay. I think there are some disturbing moments in here, but it isn't necessarily a scary movie. It is funny, though. There are some pretty good comedy for sure, and that's keeping in touch with what I like with the Scream franchise. So if you're looking for a funny movie, I think that this film does its job. But if you're aiming to see if this movie is scary, I don't think you're really going to find it to be that intimidating. But if you did see Scream 5, what did you think about this movie? Did you find it to be scary or not so scary? Put your thoughts down in the comment section below and let's have a conversation about it. And like this video if you agree with what I say, or dislike this video if you disagree with what I say. I don't mind the dislikes. So that is it I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be sure to see you in the next video.